Today's daf yomi is full in daf mem zayin, but we're going to start on the bottom of mem vavam days, 3 lines from the bottom. The Gemara says, "Amar Rava hani tarte uni tisrichin la'adadi leislahu bedika." So if you have a lung, typically has 5 lobes, 3 on top and cranial lobes, and 2 on the bottom, the caudal lobes. So if two of the lobes are attached to each other by like some scab or something. So in this context, we're going to say leislu bedika. In this context, we say that you can't really check them because the reason why you can't check them is we can't. What's the matter? Motzi. So you can't really check them because you have to because this adhesion testifies that there was a hole in that place, and the adhesion is just covering it up, but it's not a real healing of it. And so therefore, in that context, we're going to say it's certainly going to be not acceptable. It's not kosher. Below Amran Ela Shelo Kisidron. And when do we say that if there's an adhesion between the lobes, or in the bottom of 46b, that it's going to be treif? Only if their lobes are not growing naturally. That if didn't here take a Gemara Dani. So come down here, Dani. So that's only if that wasn't the natural way it was growing of a Kisidron. But if this was a natural way it was growing, I know Rivisayu, that's the way it grew. And so therefore that's healthy, and that's going to be a kosher animal. When we talk about the lungs here, the lungs are the organ and the animal that you have to check. Meaning to say, even if there's nothing obviously wrong for them, you have to check the lungs, because the concept is that the lungs are typically the ones that have problems with them. So unlike all the other organs, which you just could do a cursory glance, this one you actually require an inspection. On top of 47a, Amar Rava hani tarte bui dismichi la'adadi. So Rava said these two blisters that are attached to each other, leislu bedikusa. If you have like these two blisters that came up on the lung, so Rava had a concept that the only reason why they were attached to each other was because there was a hole in them in the lung, and so therefore the hole put up this scab around it. So if there's 2 of them, you can't check it, and so therefore it's going to be a treif. Well, let's say there was chada, let's say there was 1 umischazaya katarki, but there was like a hole in it, so it looked like it was 2. So then what you do is mysinon silu, you bring like a thorn, and we make we like pop the blister, and we see if both of them pour out, both of the blisters are popped, then chali, then it's obviously 1 ukasher, and it's going to be kosher because 1 blister is okay, low, but if both of them don't pop out, then tarti ninu, then it's 2, and then there's a treifa. Rava said, chamisha oni isla l'reya. You have to look at the pictures in your Gemara. So there are 5 lobes to the lung. 5 lobes to the lung. 3 are the cranial, 2 are the caudal lobes to the lung. So hey une isla l'reya. Apa klape gavra. And then when you turn them towards the person, when you turn them down, when they're facing a person, meaning to say when the animal is hanging towards you, then there's 3, like when you hang it from its legs to fillet the animal, then there's 3 on your right side, utarti mismoa, 3 on the right and 2 on the left. So basically, 3 on the right and 2 on the left. Chasir yatir. And if there's be less or more than this, if there'll be more or less than this, then we're going to say under these circumstances, if an extra lobe where it's not supposed to be, chaser o yasir o cholif, or if it's reversed, treifa, then it's going to be treifa. It's not kosher under these circumstances. Ahu yisei rasa, that let's say there was an extra. Let's say there was a case. There's an actual case. We're on 47a in the middle of the page. There's a case of an extra lung, extra lobe. That it was the animal with the extra lobe was brought before Marimer, Ravacha was sitting outside the Beis Medrash of Maremer because he wanted to learn Torah from him, but he went to see how he paskined under each circumstance. Amalei Mai, Amrocha. So when the people went out, he asked them, "What did he do to you?" Amalei Achshara Anyway. He said he made it kosher. He said that even though there was an extra lobe on the lung, Maremer said it was kosher. Amalei Hadar Ailei Kamei. He said, go up and ask him. And ask him again what the halacha is. Meaning, say maybe he didn't look at it good. Rashi says, maybe maybe he didn't know this halacha. So he said, go back and ask him. So Maremer said to Ravacha, go back. No, he said to the people who brought it back in, because it's unusual. If somebody says it's kosher, you usually don't go back. Although I've had, actually many times people are like, are you sure it's okay? Why do you ask the first time? So he said, Zil Emule. So Maremer said to the people who asked him the second time, go say to the person, Amanda Yosef Ababa, say, go back to the person who's standing at the gate and say, the law is now like Rava by this case of an extra lobe on the liver. And that which we say that the extra lobe is kosher, that's if it is only if it's in the if it's like in the same row with them, so it looks like it's part of them. But if it's between the lobes, meaning it's out of order treifa. So again, we said an extra lobe. We had said the position of Rava that an extra lobe is no good, but then we said we don't pass like that position of Rava. So an extra lobe is okay, but that's only if it's in the normal manner of growth. But if it's out of order, it's going to be a treifa. And ahu bene. So let's say that there was one time where it was out of order. It also came into Ravashi, Sava Ravashi Mitrafa. So it's out of order. So we said if it's out of order, it's going to be treif. So Ravashi thought to make a treif. Rapuna Mar Bar Avia. So he said Kohani Chiyave Briasa. So he said Kohani Chiyave Briasa Hachi Islahu. The Karle Tabache in Nuse Devarda. He says, yeah, in the animals that grow that are basically like kind of wild, or they're not like raised exactly on your farm, this is a typical growth, and we call it the rows of the lobes. So basically, there's another heter that if this is the typical way of the animal's growth, it's going to be okay. Anyway, the upshot of all this is you have to be very, very careful about the lungs, and that's the concept of glot kosher. Glot means it's smooth, and you didn't even have to check the lungs. There wasn't even a shylon. So now the Gemara says you can't have glot. Sometimes people say glot means something else today. Glot means today that it's no questions at all. The kashros is supreme. Like we get glot kosher fruit. Obviously, all fruit is not. There's no lungs on fruit. So anyway, but it's become a colloquial term. Hani mili. So the Gemara says, and hani mili migavai, and all of this that we say that the rose-like item on the lobe on the lungs is not going to be treifa. That's only when it is under the lungs, meaning to say when it's turned towards the stomach. Avo agava, but you had a question, Gabi? Were you raising your hand? But agava, but it's on the top of the lung, i.e., it's towards the back, meaning facing up. I feel kitarfa da'asa treifa, even if it's small, like the size of a leaf of a hadas of a myrtle is treifa. Okay. So now next case, we're on top of 47b. Amara from Hirea de Damia la Ufta. So let's say you have a lung that looks like a ufta. Ufta is like a splinter. So if you have a piece on the lung that looks like a piece of wood, it's treifa. So what does it mean? It looks like the lung. Some say b'chazusa, that its appearance is like the splinter. Begisha, some say in the texture. That means that's how it looks like it. That in its like I guess depth, that it became white and it was swollen like the splinter. Ve'ika da'amri de pechiza. And some say that it got hard like a splinter. V'ika de amre deshia, it became smooth. That it doesn't have the incisions that are on the lobes anymore. Okay, so Amarava kekuchla kshera kuchla. So the women used to apply their makeup through like special applicator. The Gemara first said as a kuchla, but kuchla means blue. So if the lungs turn bluish, that's going to be kshera. Because the reason is, even though its color is off, they had an understanding that it would regain its strength completely. Kidiyusa, it relates to the word dio. Do you know what dio is? Dio is ink. So we know Allah Moshe Sinai that the ink has to be black when you write your Torah, Tefillah, Mezuzos. So if the lungs are black, that's an indication that it's treifa, because that it's not going to recover. Damar Rav Chanina, shachor adomhu. When we say with respect to a nida, the blood, obviously if there's blood, then it's going to be blood of a nida, that if it's black, that if she sees a spot that's black, that's an indication that blood was really red, that it was red blood, but it decomposed, so it turned black. So too, we're going to say shachor. If it's black blood, if it's a black lung, it's really red, but it became shalaka. It became the blood became like diseased. But we see from here that it's going to be ruined because it's going to get a hole in it in the end. So therefore, it's going to be a treifa. But if it would be yeruka, but if it would be yarok in modern Hebrew is green. But in the Talmud, it's not typically green, not usually green, sometimes green. We'll see what color it is here. But if it's yarok, it's going to be kashera because it's an indication that it will recover its health. Meet the Rabbi Nassan. And we have this teaching from Rabbi Nassan. He says, aduma kashera, that if it's red, it's kosher. And how do we know that? Meet the Rabbi Nassan. The Tanya Rabbi Nassan Omer. Rabbi Nassan said, Pamacha talachti l'karchayam. One time I went overseas, and basa isha achas lefanai. And a woman came before me, Shemoa bena rishon, that she circumcised her first son, Umeis, and he died. Sheni Umeis. She had a second son, Rahman al-Tzlan, died during the circumcision. Shlishi, the third son, Eviaso lefanai. She brought him before me, and Ra'isiv, and I saw him Shaya Adam, that he was red. I saw that the child was red. And Amartila Biti, I said, my daughter, Hamtini lo achi velabo damo. Don't circumcise him yet because the blood hasn't really been absorbed yet into the body yet. And so therefore, Rashi says the blood was going between the skin and the flesh. It's like he had no blood. And so he's not really healthy yet. And so therefore, if he has a small wound, Rashi said he's going to die. So therefore, don't circumcise him yet until his blood looks good. So she waited. So she didn't do it on the 8th day, but she waited until it was the proper time. And then he lived. So they called the baby after me. They called him Nasan Ababli in my name. Shuv Pamachas, and other times, Halach, they were Medinas Kapotkia. Where's Kapotkia? Cappadia. We got to help. We phoned a friend, and Asher helped us. He says it's in Turkey. Basa Isha Lefanai, a woman came before me, Shemal ben Arishon Umeis, Shani Umeis. She circumcised in the first one, he died, the second one, he died. Shlishi, third one, Eviaso Lefanai. She brought him before me. Ra'isiv Shaya Yarok. I saw that he was Yarok. Again, we don't know what Yarok is exactly yet. He touched the bow. I looked at him, V'loya bo dam bris, and I saw, that there is no blood. There's no blood for the bris, meaning to say that there wasn't enough blood circulating in his body. And so therefore I said, Amarti lo biti amtini lo achi bo damo. I said, wait until his blood starts circulating throughout his body. She waited. They called him Nasan Abavli in my name, meaning to say. So here it seems like the yarok. This is like what we say today that the Billy Rubin count. The baby is yellow. So that's what seems. So here yarok means like it would seem it's yellow. Shadon circumcised means too yellow. The blood is not circulating. But he says, I saw that there was no dam bris. There's no blood of the bris. You could ask Max. Max is starting to be a mole now. So you could ask him about the idea that different moles have different approaches to what is dam bris. So what is the blood of the bris? That some moles are of the opinion that you need to make it as bloody bris. The more blood that there's there, I would say the more blood, the better, but you need to have a large amount of blood in order to fulfill the idea of dam bris. Others say, no, you just need a drop of blood. You don't need a lot of blood. And so this relates to the technique that's used for the milah, that some moles will use tools that will make it less bloody. And others will say, no, that's not good because we want it to be as bloody. We need dam bris. So, but there is dam. Anyway, getting into the weeds here, but that's the concept. Okay. Amarav Kahana Kikavda Keshera. Let's say the lung looked like the color of the liver. Then it's going to be kosher. And let's say the lung turned and looked like kibisra, looked like the color of meat, of flesh, treifa. It's treifa. Because that's going to be an indication that it's sick. How do you remember this? Ubasar basada treifa. That if will be meat in the fields, will be treif. Meaning to say, if the lungs look like the meat, it's treif. That's our mnemonic. Amarav sama brei de rava hai rea de damya kikashuta. So lungs that look like kashuta. What's kashuta? Kashuta are hops. You know what hops are, Will? Do you know what hops are, Donnie? Okay, but I'm sure Jeff knows. Jeff, because hops is what nowadays I don't think they make beer out of hops anymore. Do they do it? Usually in America they do corn, right? But there used to be that beer was what? So it's something that grows from the ground, which I don't know if people eat hops. Do people eat straight hops? They use it to make beer. I don't know. It's something. It's a thing that grows from the ground. I guess they don't grow too much of it in America. Oh, I bet you that's coming back. Like people eat all sorts of funky things in their salads. Don't look up on AI. Can you just can you put hops in your salad? Can you look that up for me, Will? Can you put hops in your salad? Kishuta, but anyway, it's yellowish. So a lung that's similar to hops, Morika is saffron, very expensive growth spice. Biasar, if it looks like the yellow of an egg, all these things, the lung that's yellowish, it's going to be treifa. It's no good. Ella, Yeruka, what do they say? It's loading. You don't pay for faster. Ella Yeruka, the kshera. So when it says that a lung that's yarok is kosher, echidamia, what's that like? So Gemara says that's kikarti. That's green like a leek. So it's green like a leek. So if it's yarok kikarti, it's going to be kosher.
Says yes, you can put it in a salad that's not very common, and it has the flavor of beer.
There you go. So, which tastes disgusting. Okay, Amaravina atum berea. Let's say there's a place in the. So anyway, you see that if it's yellow, it's no good, but if it's green like a leek, it's going to be kosher. So Amaravina atum berea. Let's say there's a clog in the lung. So Mycena and Sakina, the Karina law, we bring like a very sharp knife, and we want to know if the clog is an indication of illness in the lung, or diseased lung. So you bring a sharp knife and you cut it up, and we check it. Ispa mugla, if there's pus that comes out, then we say that the lung was clogged because of the pus. Ukshira, maybe it had this pus, and so therefore it's kosher. It's not really clogged. Velo, but if it's not pussy, musvina nala, gadfo roka, and we'll put on the place where there was a cut. We put, let's say, a feather or some spit, and even batpitza. And if these things move afterwards, that's an indication that there's air coming through, and it's kshera, velo, treifa. Otherwise, the treifa. Amar Rav Yosef, Krum Sha'ola Machmas Maka Berea. Let's say you have a scab that covered up a wound in the lungs. Anal krum. That's not going to be a sign of healing. That's just a temporary, and the hole is still going to be considered open, and therefore the lungs are not kosher. But Amar Rav Yosef, Hi Rea da Avsha. Okay, so this is like we had this in yesterday's daf. It's the same thing. Let's say the lung makes some noise. That basically, one of the ways you would check the lung is you would blow it up. Shochet would take and blow into it to see if it has a hole in it. And if it makes like a sound like air escaping, so we want to know if there's a hole there or not. If we want to know where the hole is, you put on it gadfo, gila, or roka. You put on a feather or a straw or some spit. If it flutters up its treifa, vilolo kshera, vilo yadina, and if we don't know where the hole is to check to see if it has a hole, maisi mishichusa de maya pashori. Bring a bowl of warm water, musfina labegava, and you put it in and you see where it bubbles. And this is how you tell if your tire is flat, right? Anybody check this to see if your tire is flat? You put it in a barrel, and then you see where it bubbles up, and that's how you know where the hole is in the tire. Now, anybody ever see that being done? I did that in my garage. I do it a lot because I have a lot of flats. Okay. But don't do it. What if do warm water? Don't do it in hot water. That causes it to shrink. The karirilo, don't do it in cold water. The mitarshi, that causes it to get tight. Where do it in warm water. If it bubbles up, it's treif. Otherwise, kshara. And also tata inkiv, that proves that why is it kosher? Because it says tata inkiv ilolo inkiv. It means just the bottom membrane of the lung has a hole in it, but not the top membrane. So therefore, it's still kosher. And the only reason why it's hissing is not because the lungs are actually open, but zika de bene beneu. It's the air that's going from the lower lung, the lower membrane, to the upper membrane, but the lung itself doesn't have a hole in it. So therefore, it's kosher. Amar ula reya shenishpacha kakiton. So let's say you have a lung, and the inside of it is basically like dissolved inside the membranes. So we want to know, as a result of it doesn't have as much tissue because it's dissolved. Nevertheless, we're going to say it's kosher, even though part of the inside tissue of the lung has dissolved. Alma kasav chisaron b'mifnim moshme chisaron. We see from here that even though the lung is, we said in our Mishnah at the beginning of Eilut Treifos, that if the lung is defective, if it's missing something, it's going to be disqualified. But here, even though it's missing something, it's kosher because it's only internal of the organ that it's missing. Has anybody ever held a lung in your hands? Okay, I held chicken lungs, but I never held an animal lung. Eitzri Rabbi Abba le'ula hareya shenikva u'shechasra mai. Let's say, so we say, what are you talking about? How could we say that this lung is going to be kosher if it's missing something? Didn't we say that if it said in our Mishnah that if the lung is punctured or if it's missing, it's going to be disqualified? But what do we say that means? VH. So my chosr, when our Mishnah says if it's missing, if it has a hole in it or it's missing, when it says missing, what does it mean? Healing. If you want to say it's an external missing of the organ, I know nikva. That's exactly what a hole is. So it must be el avni bifnim. So it doesn't. Our Mishnah must be referring to a case where it's internally missing inside. Don't we see from here that an internal missing of the lungs is called a missing, and therefore it should be disqualified? Gemara says, no, that's not what it means. La'olam de ka'amris. That which we said, it means to say la'olami b'chut. It means external. Meaning when the Mishnah says that if it's missing, it's disqualified, it's an external missing. With the ka'amris, nikva. And then when our Mishnah says that if it's punctured, it's disqualified, Lo tzricha, the only reason why that's needed is to tell us the Rabbi Shimon, to tell us about Rabbi Shimon's position, who says, he says a hole, a puncture is only disqualified if it goes all the way down to the bronchial tubes. But ani mili nekav delays bechisaron. That's if there's a hole that doesn't have a lacking in it, a defect. But if there be a chisaron in the lung, then even though it doesn't reach the bronchial tubes, then Rabbi Shimon would say it's disqualified. Rabbi Chananya chalash. Rabbi Chananya got sick. So imagine this rabbi got sick. So Olagabe, Rabbi Nassim, V'chol Gedolei Ador. So all the Gedolei Ador and Rabbi Nassim went to visit this rabbi who's sick. What do you think they would do when the rabbi's sick? He's lying there in his bed convalescing. So what do? They bring him a lung. And they say, look at this lung for us. So you see, when you go to somebody who's sick, it's a musar, Will, that you're supposed to try to show that you still need that person's help. That's what they asked him for his help. They brought him this lung, which was dissolved inside. And he said it's kosher. So, like he said earlier, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So Amar Rava, the Rava says, when do we say it's kosher? When do we say that a lung whose inside parts have dissolved is kosher? That's where the tubes are still intact. If the tubes are not intact, it's not kosher. How do we know if the tubes are intact or not? You bring basically a piece of clay that's covered with lead. It's smooth. And we tear open the membrane and we stick in this piece of clay covered lead covering the clay, and it's a glaze. Okay, that's the right word for what I was saying. When you have lead covering clay, it's called glazed. Thanks. When I was just translating the word, so I didn't translate properly. That's why my teacher who taught me Greek and Latin, he told me that you have to read something in the original. If you read in the translation, you know what it's like? He said, this was his last. He says, it's like trying to kiss somebody through a veil. You're not getting the full experience. So Yisbei Shuryaki Chivari. So he says, if when you open the lung and you put it in this bowl, if there are white streaks, it's treifa, because they came from the tubes that had dissolved. V'lo otherwise it's kosher. Amar Rav Nachman Reya Shenimoka. So let's say you have a lung that basically it had parts of it had dissolved, but it's not completely dissolved like the other case. Ukrum shalakayim, but the membrane is still intact. Kashera. Reya Shenimoka ukrum shalakayim. So if the membrane is still intact, I feel machazekas revius. Even if it has up to a quarter of a lug of dissolved whatever material in there, it's going to be kshera. But it's not completely dissolved because the membrane was still intact. Their tradition was that the membrane was intact, that the animal could live for at least a year. Nitla shalfucha, let's say it's missing its womb, then kshera. And we still say it's kshera. Hitliya kavet shala. Let's say the liver became wormy. Zaya ma'isa v'alula b'nei Asya. So the people from Asya. Where's Asya? Asia. So where is they coming from? I don't know where they're coming from. They came up from Asya shlosha regalim. They came up 3 times. Yavne. Why are they being ole regal to Yavne? Yavne is not where the base of Mikdash was. So there is some say there's an Indian year of going to visit like your yeshiva or your place where you study around the festival. They went up 3 times, and then they didn't say anything. But l'regel shlishi itivru. The third time they came, they finally allowed it. They were studying the case, they were looking at it, but they finally allowed it the third time. All right, we'll stop here. Baruch Hashem, chodesh tov, chodesh tov, chodesh tov.